Well, hello. Welcome back to another exciting edition of Coffee with Stephen. So, this week's blog is entitled Handmaidens of Serfdom. There's been some interesting developments over the last number of years. We've seen, obviously, the change in our political alignments here within the United States. We've also seen burgeoning attempts at establishing freedom and overthrowing authoritarian regimes from Hong Kong in the Middle East and most recently in Cuba. And what's really interesting is that now that the country du jour happens to be Cuba, which has been a darling of collectivists for multiple generations, now they're not overly excited about the idea of essentially encouraging this popular revolt. And it's not just individual, Congress people who are essentially supporting the Castro regime, which I'm still going to call it the Castro regime, even though he's no longer, or they're no longer in control. And it's a weird sort of quasi-Marxism to begin with. It's definitely an authoritarian regime. That goes without question. Regardless, there seems to be this natural hesitation, not just on the part of the usual suspects, okay, the fellow travelers within our government that would never say anything negative about a socialist or communist regime. It's also the mainstream popular media. It was fascinating when these protests first started to manifest. I first read about it in the BBC. And the BBC articulated this as, well, this was a spontaneous eruption of anger by the Cuban people as it related to the COVID response by the Cuban government. Okay, so this was very, very localized in their mind. Now, they don't interview anybody, they don't cite any examples. It apparently cannot be beyond the realm of understanding for the BBC that the Cuban people may actually be revolting against corrupt authoritarianism. I mean, this just completely violates their worldview. We also saw the New York Times articulate that it was a very famous headline about a week ago, where they said that the Cuban people were chanting slogans like freedom, and then here's the kicker, and other anti-government slogans. So in the New York Times mindset, the idea that somebody would articulate a belief in individual freedom is tantamount to being anti-government. All right, so this is incredibly problematic, and especially for the fact that we're seeing authoritarianism actually develop here in the United States. Now, during the Trump administration, you saw the left constantly complaining that he was an authoritarian. This was factually accurate as it related to him as a specific individual. We saw abuses of the Constitution, but not in the ways that the left would probably actually consider them to be abuses of the Constitution. He had no grounding sort of political philosophy. It's one of the biggest complaints that I had about Trump. But real authoritarianism, I mean hardcore nuts and bolts, that really came out in spades with the Biden administration and what they've been doing as it relates to executive orders or just wholesale abandonment of the Constitution. They are, on top of everything else, elevating the concept of the state to what could best be described as a religious institution. And that's been one of the goals of collectivists for years, to move away from a religious-based society and move instead towards a secular-based society, but one that still has a religiosity, the religiosity simply being vested in the vestiges of government. So in any event, I hope you enjoy the blog. It goes up on the website on Wednesday. You can always access it by going to Artemis or artemishq.com/blog. And you're always welcome to comment directly on the blog or email me directly at stephen@artemishq.com. As always, train constantly, train consistently, train repetitively, and train with purpose. Above all else, stay safe.